haven't they found all the physical clues by now that are there to find? It's like virtually every day they're out there. You're shaking your head. No, Maureen, why?
Because being on the evidence response team and also being part of, being a case agent involved in a lot of these cases, especially when you open a tip line. So as soon as they offered that $50,000 reward, that just opened the floodgates as everyone here, certainly those of us in the Bureau, can attest to. And when they open those floodgates, you're going to get a whole bunch of other tips. For example, you're going to get phone calls saying, hey, on the day after she disappeared or late that night, I was driving by a highway, whatever, and right here at the mile marker 32, I saw a car pulled over and parked or whatever. Then you've got all the technical stuff going on in the background that we talked about with the geofencing and everything. And if they opened it up and looked at the hours afterwards and such, they'll notice that two devices were stopped on the side of the road, someplace or the other, so even they're checking all these things out as they come in and as they're developing throughout the investigation. It's very fluid and it's very intensive.
James Hamilton, what do we glean from the fact that they keep going back to Annie and Tomas's home and neighborhood? Nancy had eaten dinner with them that night, allegedly played games, and was dropped off back at her house, which is, I'm told, 4 miles or 10 minutes away. So why, I don't want to jump to conclusions about that couple, but that is not, we're told, the crime scene. So why are they so obsessed with canvassing that neighborhood and that backyard?
Yeah, I don't think you're jumping to conclusions at all. You always start with who saw the victim last. And in this case, that's who saw Miss Guthrie last. So that makes complete sense that they're going to, run that to ground and continue to look at that story. And, don't forget, kidnappings are, like we were saying earlier, they're very, very difficult. And so this, indication there's more searching going on. This is a very desolate area. This isn't Manhattan. It's possible there's, a place to put a body in a lot of different places. And remember, this kidnapping, obviously there was some violence, and we know there's a heart issue. So either the violence could have caused some, God forbid she died during the kidnapping or shortly thereafter, or her heart, God forbid, stopped. And now this kidnapper's stuck with this dead body. What's he going to do, right? He's not going to get any money for it. If that was his intent, was to kidnap to get the money. Now what are you going to do? Well, maybe you dump it and then you just, drive away. And so there's going to be, like Maureen was saying, people giving tips saying, hey, I saw this, no one's talked about this white van. That's a whole good lead. No one seemed to want to talk about it. I'd love to talk about it. But, that's what you're seeing here. I'm shocked that there's a very specialized unit of dogs that the FBI has that can track a lot of things. I'm surprised they haven't been deployed.Maybe they have, but things like that, I would have had expected to see by now.
Mm-hmm. Will, you're shaking your head. Yes.
Yeah, a couple of things I'd probably pick up on, Megyn, from your comments about the interest in family members or close family members. Well, the first thing that I got taught when I first learned kidnap and ransom negotiation was the 70% rule, and it still prevails to this day. And that is that in most kidnappings, if this is indeed a kidnapping, in 70% of cases, there will be someone connected to the victim that will be working in close proximity or will be a family member. And I think through the process of obviously elimination, the feds are going to have to look very much at the family very, very closely to see whether they are a viable prospect in terms of being suspects or whether they can be discounted from their inquiries. And just to cover on a point that James made, I've negotiated on the return of a dead body. So again, depending on who the group is, I agree with James that yes, if he does have the frail Nancy on his hands and she passes away, they may potentially discard the body. But if there's a slightly more professional element behind it, they may still continue to negotiate against that for the return of it. I think the key issue here really is the proof of life or lack thereof.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Fitz. I can see you want to get in.
Yeah, and historically speaking, everything that's being said here in the last few minutes is accurate. The last known, and I'll touch on a few subjects, and I'm going to be corrected here, but the last known for-profit kidnapping of which we are aware took place in the outskirts of Oslo, Norway. And the media was not involved or told about that for weeks after it happened. Kidnapping note was left at the table. She's missing. Body never recovered. Husband was arrested, then released thereafter. We brought up Sidney Riso. I did early last week, the Exxon executive. He died 4 days into his captivity. Those kidnappers kept it up for 50 plus days after that, trying to get the money. Husband and wife team eventually arrested. We talked about some of that last week. And to go back to the search aspects of it, there's never a wrong search or a bad search. I mean, as long as it's legal with consent, things we've all discussed already so far. And there's nothing wrong with re-interviewing, re-interviewing, multiple times people as new information comes up. So to me, it doesn't necessarily put any more of a suspicion on family members when agents are going back. The other thing I'll throw out there, I haven't heard this mentioned at all by anyone in the media. And I've been to Phoenix a few times. I'm not sure Tucson. I know it's not a lake-filled or pond-filled area, but I'm sure there are reservoirs or retaining ponds, pools, whatever they call them. I've heard nothing about any dive teams going into them anywhere along the way, and maybe someone here has. But that's something that should also be considered. Again, I'm not looking for Mrs. Guthrie's here necessarily, but certainly tools, elements of the crime, anywhere along any sort of egress. That's something they may want to consider if they haven't already.
We predicted this, and now it hits via TMZ, that the FBI and Pima County Sheriff's Department are homing in on the outfit the presumed kidnapper wore as he approached the front door. They are on the hunt for who bought the items, law enforcement sources involved in the investigation tell TMZ. They singled out 3 items in particular: those gloves, Maureen, the backpack, and the gun visible on the Nest video. We're told authorities are contacting manufacturers and retailers to figure out who may have purchased the items: the gloves, the backpack, and the gun. What's interesting to me is, like, maybe not the gloves, but like the backpack and the gun, that's something, guns are big in America and they're big in the Southwest. It's not unusual to find somebody out there with a gun, and it's not unusual to find anybody with a backpack. A face mask that, you wear that where I grew up in Syracuse, New York. Everyone's got one. But in Tucson?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You can wear it down to get your mail if you want to have your face when you get back inside. But that to me seems very suspicious. In any event, they, of course, are going to do that because we saw in Kohlberger, as clever as he was in some ways, he bought that damn K-Bar knife on Amazon. So even someone named Brian Kohlberger was brilliant in some ways, but made such elemental mistakes. So I get they're probably checking the Amazon histories of all the family and maybe contractors who show up at the house, right? And then beyond that, you got to go the other end of the transaction, the sellers. That you can't just go to Amazon and say, who bought a face mask? Can you? I don't know if you can. But you definitely can go to the retail stores and say, do you sell this backpack? Look at it. And it was very distinctive looking. I still haven't figured out whether those are lights on his shoulder straps or reflective patches, but it's a very distinctive backpack, and we have both the front and the back of it pictured. Very helpful, no?
Very helpful. Very helpful. I think it's that you've highlighted the key areas as far as I'm concerned, which are the most identifiable in trying to obviously trace the firearm. I agree. I think even in terms of the ski mask, I think that's could be a lost leader in trying to follow inquiries on that. It would be very difficult. And who knows, maybe he knitted it or a family member knitted it. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's been bought from a retail store. But I think the backpack, certainly, the trousers, certainly the jacket, certainly. Those are the 3 areas I'd be most concentrating on.
One of our audience members was pointing out, can we play the video where he realizes that he's got to turn around, he's got to go back out and get the vegetation, and where he bends down. And she raised something that I actually has been gnawing at me too. Is there something wrong with this guy's leg or knee? Because watch, when he turns around and goes back out there, hold on, he's trying to do his little tap thing to get the Nest camera off, which does not work. Stand by. Okay, now he's backing up. Okay, so where he bends over there, he doesn't look very facile. He doesn't look very limber. And when he bends over there, he doesn't look like the most limber person either. Just made me wonder, I'm really going out on a limb here, but the calmness with which he executed the crime and maybe an injury Could you possibly be looking for somebody, former law enforcement? That's who committed that Exxon kidnapping, former law enforcement. Or was he former, Jim? Or was he current? Anyway, he was definitely law enforcement.
Former Exxon Security, which of course was Exxon Security Vice President who was kidnapped.
Okay. I don't know. I guess you guys, I think, might conclude, based on what you told me yesterday, Maureen and Fitz, that probably not former law enforcement, given the way he's holding that gun. That doesn't, right? And so then maybe not former military either.
But he's altering the way he walks when he approaches the front porch and the camera, because people can say, oh, he looks surprised that there's a camera, but what we know is how he's dressed. He's dressed to conceal his identity. He has a set of gloves under the nitrile gloves. He may have leggings on under those pants to make him look a little bit heavier than he is in or her, which I don't know. That facial hair looks pretty legit, but what do I know?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's an altered gait, just on the off chance that someone gets some video off this thing, or if he can't destroy the camera right away, or whatever his plan was, because he definitely 100% is altering the way he walks and his stance as he approaches that camera. Would you guys agree with that?
It doesn't look natural.
No.
But most likely for utilitarian purposes, as opposed to a nagging injury of some sort. We can't rule it out, of course, but he currently has his head down and he has a big backpack on. We don't know how heavy that thing is and what's in there, of course. So his gait is going to be a little bit, sort of off in that regard. He may have had some practice runs. Let's not forget, too, all the things they're looking for. I'm not sure if they sell flashlights that strictly are designed for the mouth, that you push the button, and you squeeze it somehow and the light goes on. That's something else I'm hoping. There can't be too many people that buy those things within 100 miles of Tucson. So I'm hoping that is something they focus on. It could be a clue like that really helps.
There were some astute viewers who wrote in about that, what looks like a mouth flashlight of some kind.
It is.
Saying that you would have to remove from your mouth with your gloves. And there could be a transfer of, your saliva onto the exterior of your gloves. And those gloves then had to touch things in Nancy's home. So that's actually somewhat promising. This guy probably does have his own saliva remnants on those gloves, and definitely used the gloved hands to go into the home and hurt Nancy and get Nancy. And I'm sure he touched something. Go ahead.
There's
Maureen.
one thing I wanted to say about that transfer, because that's a very good point. That is a mouth flashlight, and you turn it off and on by biting on it. A lot of apparently airline mechanics and stuff like that, or people that deal with wires and stuff, they'll use it so that their hands can remain free while they do their work. And it's pretty much the same technology as those headlamp ones that you get. But with regard to the gloves, a lot of people always think that I'm wearing gloves, my DNA can't get anywhere, but everyone underestimates the number of times they touch their face, no matter what. Just going like this, and now you touch something. So that's going to be the DNA stuff. And the way you find that sometimes, even if we look at the, when they took Nancy's car out of the garage, it could have been something as simple as when they went back in there and they looked at they turned off the lights and they turned on their flashlights. I used flashlights extensively, and you could see that there's an area where the dust has been swiped away. That's an area you want to look at and you want to test. You're certainly not going to test the entire vehicle as a general rule, but if there's an area like that where the dust is disturbed, that's where it got swiped, and that's where the transfer potentially could have occurred.
Well, let me ask you, Will and James, what you think. Because ran this by our other panelists yesterday. There's one photo in the series that's been released by Kash Patel that shows, we think, this same abductor farther back, without the backpack. And you can't see his face at all. It's either because the camera is too pixelated, that's what we were speculating yesterday, or maybe he's turned it around entirely. But here's the shot. You cannot see any sort of a backpack whatsoever. I don't think you can see the gun. We zoomed in on it yesterday. And you cannot see the holes for the eyes or the mouth. And this, too, was released to us by the FBI. Now, I can go with maybe pixelation too far away on the face mask, I guess, but no backpack. The backpack, there was all this reflective stuff and the lights or whatever's on. Like, what do you think we're seeing there?
I mean, just jumping in there, James, if you don't mind. There's a couple of quick questions, Megyn. Were you given actually unedited footage which ran continually, or are these just snapshots which were provided by the Bureau? So yes, again, they may not necessarily be consecutive. There may have been an initial probe. Sometimes they will make an initial approach to see, is there anybody else in the house? Is it undisturbed? Is there just one person there? It's quiet. Everyone's gone to bed. So he may have returned, or she may have returned, to go and get that backpack from their vehicle and then make that actual approach. So it could have been an initial probe. But the thing that, certainly before I pass to James, the thing that really confuses me, and I'm sure I'd love to hear the opinions of the others, is there are so many contradictions in this whole method of approach. He's using a torch which has to be activated by the mouth rather than a head torch, and it's not a question of him being necessarily seen by anybody with a head torch, because he's carrying his weapon obviously outside of his waistband. So, and again, the gloves, the mask, the ill-preparedness for actually removing the Ring doorbell. There are so many contradictions here, from what could have been professional to what's somewhat of a clown show and an amateur.
Yes, totally. Go ahead, James.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of this. I was looking at the picture to see if the shoes were the same, to make sure we've got, the same person, and maybe not.
A lot of our online sleuths watching us on YouTube say the shoes look different to them, that the shoes from, faceless man look different from the shoes.
Yeah.
But overall, I would say he looks very similar to the guy who we know approached the door.
Yeah, when we're doing like surveillance training, we're always taught, shoes, watches, and glasses, people don't usually change those. And so I always kind of look there first. And this person's shoes are different. So is it two people? I don't know. It might be the same person. They're wearing the same outfit. Could be two. The eye holes missing is odd. But I think I agree with Will. It's quite possible this is the early. They came up, approached, see what they're dealing with. Then they come back with the backpack, and then they do this, silliness with the flowers to do the obfuscation of the camera. But for me, this looks like a probing in the beginning before the actual act.
International disputes, inflation, rising national debt, digital currency. There's a never-ending list of reasons gold has risen over 700% in the last 20 years. And a never-ending list of reasons smart Americans diversify a portion of their savings into precious metals with Birch Gold Group. Gold can thrive during uncertainty, which is why it's a crucial part of a balanced strategy. It gives you peace of mind, given all the events that could impact the U.S. economy. See if holding gold in a tax-sheltered retirement account is right for you. Birch Gold can help you convert an existing IRA or 401k into an IRA in gold. Just text MK to the number 989898 to receive your free info kit on gold. There's no obligation, just useful information. With an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau and tens of thousands of happy customers, consider letting Birch Gold help you diversify with gold, so you too can have peace of mind regardless of the uncertainty. Text MK to 989898. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.